Do you know if your kyanite is real, fake, dyed, stabilized? My name is Sheila from Satin Crystals, and today we are going to find out if you have real kyanite in your collection. Thank you for being here, learning about real versus fake stones, and subscribing to the Satin Crystals channel. The most certain way to know if your kyanite is real or not is to send it in to a certified gemological laboratory. They can do all the scientific tests and give you a certificate telling you what your stone is. This is usually not available for most of us because it does destroy the piece and it is monetarily maybe doesn't make sense for something like kyanite. The next best thing is to have a reputable seller who knows what they're talking about, who's educating you about gemstones, and it's somebody you can trust to buy from. If you don't have a reputable seller available or you just want to figure things out on your own, we're going to give you a few tips here on how to tell if your kyanite is real or fake. So first of all, if you have already seen the kyanite's meaning video, you know that kyanite has a soft and a hard axis, meaning that one angle of kyanite is softer than the other angle. So for example, I have this piece of kyanite here. One direction, usually the parallel long direction, is much softer than the lengthwise or the cross section of it. To test this, I can use a steel bit, or if you have a steel nail. This is around a 6.5 on the Mohs scale of hardness out of 10, whereas the softer side of kyanite can run from 4.5 to 5.5, and the harder side can run from 6.5 to 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness. So you want something in between that will scratch one direction but will not scratch the other direction, so you can determine if this is a kyanite stone or not. So when I did scratch my kyanite, this is a raw green kyanite piece, one way it did scratch and the other way it did not scratch. So this gives me a good indication that this is a kyanite stone because not many stones are anisotropic or dual hardness. Real kyanite will never have air bubbles. Air bubbles is an indication that it is glass. So if you have a lens that you can look into your kyanite and check for any air bubbles, or a microscope or something that is going to magnify into the stone, you can check to see if it's glass or not. Now, this usually applies just to the really translucent kyanites because you can see within the stone. The more opaque stones is going to be very hard to tell if there is air bubbles or not. But this is one test you can do to check if there's air bubbles in your kyanite. Real kyanite will have all kinds of inclusions, but it will never be banded. For example, this agate stone has a bunch of bands, parallel layers within it. Kyanite will not have this. This is a real kyanite stone, and it does have all kinds of inclusions, some mineral inclusions, some dips, some veins, some kinds of translucent spots, but it does not have banding. Real kyanite will always have a white streak. So no matter what the outside color is, for example, this is a black kyanite, when you streak it against a white unglazed tile, this is called the crystal streak test, the powder will come out as white. So no matter the color of kyanite, it always has a white streak. Real kyanite does come in different colors. So although blue kyanite is all over the gemstone market, there are other kyanites that come in natural oranges, blacks. There's also green, white, gray, sometimes a yellowish tone of kyanite. So don't be fooled thinking that your kyanite is fake just because it is one of these other colors. Real kyanite will have a glassy or pearly reflection. So it reflects light like glass or pearls. So even this rough piece, if you look closely, you'll see that it has a shiny surface, kind of like a little mirror reflecting back at you. Now, some more dull pieces will be oiled or waxed by some vendors to give it that kyanite shine. This could also be applied to fake material, so you want to be careful about that. Real kyanite will splinter when it's fractured. So unlike glass, which shatters into little bits, kyanite will splinter like wood. So little shards, little fragments, little splinters that look like they can poke your skin. So you'll use a little hammer. Obviously, this is a destructive test. So if you have a piece of kyanite in the collection that you can sacrifice, you can try this test. I have done this test for you, and I will show it to you here. Real kyanite can show chatoyancy or cat's-like iridescence on the surface of the stone. This is usually seen in the polished versions. So if you look closely at these rings, if I move the light, it'll reflect like a cat's eye, that iridescence that you'll find in kyanite. That is highly coveted, especially in jewelry form. So those are a few tests that you can undergo for yourself to determine if you have real or fake kyanite. We do have many more tests, including some of the scientific tests on the Satin Crystals Kyanite Real versus Fake article. So check that out if you want even more tests. Meanwhile, what if your kyanite is dyed? Now, there is a lot of dyeing of kyanite just because people like that brilliant, bold color of kyanite rather than the dull color, which doesn't sell as well. Even here at Satin Crystals, we have a dyed version of kyanite and a natural version of kyanite in the bracelet form, but we do indicate how all of your stones are treated. So unlike other vendors, you might find that they say it's a natural, untreated kyanite, whereas it is actually treated. So this was a case where I inherited a bunch of kyanite beads, but they looked very suspiciously dyed, because you can see the pools of color within the beads, which real kyanite will not have. So to test this, you just have to soak it in some acetone, which is also known as nail polish remover, and this will bleed the dye out of the stone and you will get your result. So I did do this test for you, showing you what real kyanite and dyed kyanite will do in acetone. Besides dyed kyanite, you may also come upon coated kyanite. So here we have a titanium kyanite, or it's also known as rainbow aura kyanite. This has been treated with titanium metals to give it that rainbow iridescence. This is actually a black kyanite, so they have coated it with titanium to make it much more brilliant and attractive to buyers. This is the same material, but you can see that some of the black is showing through because I had heated it previously. So you want to be aware of those. They're perfectly fine to buy as long as you know what you are buying. So make sure that they are labeled correctly on the listing. Another thing I want you to be aware of is that sometimes those brilliant dark blue kyanites are deceptively sold as blue sapphire. So just be aware of that. It's fine if you're buying kyanite because it's much less valuable or coveted than blue sapphire, but if you're in the market for blue sapphire, that is something to watch out for. Besides fake or dyed or coated kyanite, you will probably come across stabilized kyanite. Now, this kyanite here is raw, rough version. This kyanite here is a stabilized version. So you'll see there's pieces of kyanite all melded together, most likely in some sort of durable resin, so it makes it much more stable. I cannot massage my body with this raw kyanite. It's very fragile and it'll flake, but this massage wand will last for a very, very long time. So again, it's perfectly fine to buy stabilized kyanite. Most likely you have it in your collection already, because otherwise it is very hard to carve and shape and maintain its shape if you are using kyanite on a regular basis in healing or in jewelry form. It is very hard to maintain if you do not have it polished and stabilized. You will also commonly come across real ruby kyanite. So this is blue kyanite with the occasional red ruby inclusion. So that is another natural stone. It may be stabilized as well in polished form, but it is a natural, real kyanite. Now that you have a better understanding of real versus fake kyanite, take another look at your collection. Are there any fakes in there? Maybe some dyed or some stabilized kyanite? Share them here with the Satin Crystals community. We always love to learn from other people's experiences. If you need kyanite, we do have a whole selection of kyanite gemstones and jewelry at satincrystals.com. And while you're there, join the Satin Crystals VIP Club. We will send you crystal information every single week. Thank you for being here, for learning, for spreading the knowledge, and always for your positive energy here in this world.